views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
And hello, everyone, and welcome to the Social Justice Forums. I am Daren, Jaime, and if you're asking the question what the Social Justice Forums are all about, well, we take a look at a lot of the inequities that people face. We talk about civic engagement. We get multiple points of view. We elevate the conversation with good discussion as well, and we invite you to be a part of it. So stay connected, because the Social Justice Forums begins right now. And welcome back to the show. ArtStart is an organization that uses the creative process to nurture the voices, hearts, and minds of historically marginalized youth. Now they offer a space for them to imagine, believe, and then represent all of their creative vision for their lives and communities through consistent workshops. Joining me now is the Deputy Director of ArtStart, Mariama Noguera-Devers, and we thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I love what you do, because in terms of really reaching young people in the area of a space called art, you're using art to reach lives.
Yes, we were started 30 years ago, and it was always about the arts, always starting from the creative process, regardless of what the youth we work with are going through, their various circumstances, whether it's experiencing homelessness, justice involvement, or just, low income and these other scenarios. Art is the starting process of a greater, transformation and building.
Yeah. So, you mentioned some things like when you deal with the youth of today, they're dealing with the complexity of issues, and they're all, tied to some social justice topics. But talk to us about what you find the youth of today that you're dealing with in your organization are really struggling and dealing with.
Yeah. So I think, especially with COVID, it has exacerbated this issue, and that's mental health challenges. With COVID, with the quarantine, and youth having a lot of isolation from their peers, from their family, or what have you, there has been a lot of mental health concerns and issues that have come up. And so we feel as though now is even more of the right time to get involved in the arts, because we see the power of the arts. All of us who are at ArtStart are artists as well. So we've been transformed by it. And so in turn, we also work with the youth to be transformed. We see the power of arts to provide therapy, to give youth a voice, to share how they feel, or to have a platform to be heard. Because oftentimes youth are not given the mic because they're thought of, they're youth, what do they know, what have they experienced? And so I would definitely say that because many of our youth are experiencing different things, across the board, we have been seeing mental health challenges coming up with some of our youth.
Yeah. And when you look at what's going on with our youth today, mental health is an issue, depression, which is a part of mental health, and just really being able to reacclimate to society. I heard you say something a little while ago, and I want you to just elaborate on that a little bit more. You said that art has actually become therapy for some.
Yes. It's funny, when I first started at ArtStart, when I was teaching, I remember we were teaching at a detention center, and the youth would often say, like, this is such a distraction. This is such a great way to, they wouldn't put it in those words, but the idea is that they're doing this project, or they're dancing, or they're making music, and suddenly the circumstances that surround them they almost disappear. You sort of forget that you're in a detention center, or you're in, a residence for families experiencing homelessness. And so art has the power to kind of, take you away from where you are currently, and sort of reimagine, because it has that power to take you on a journey, then you're able to say, okay, this scenario that I'm in doesn't have to dictate my future. I can use my voice, I can express myself to go beyond. And so I think there's the power of the arts to take you away from your circumstances in a way, but also just the ability to be able to share things that you might not be able to share in your traditional way, whether you're using lyrics from a song or poetry to share, or just making a piece that says what you're thinking without having to say those words.
Yeah. So for yourself, talk to us about the programs at Art Start, because they're very beneficial to young people. And so for somebody who may be watching right now and says, listen, this sounds very interesting, make them more aware.
Yes. So we have 3 programs at ArtStart. There's the Creative Collectives program. These are our after-school programs on site with youth and families experiencing homelessness and justice-involved youth. So we go on site, we meet youth where they're at, and we provide, visual arts, dance, music, gardening, even cooking workshops. Then we have our Creative Connections program. This is a program that provides creative and professional development for youth between the ages of 14 and 20 who are interested in the arts but need, the resources to be able to push it a step further. And so we connect them with mentors, industry partners. We're blessed to have a lot of industry partners that are currently working in relevant fields and are able to connect the youth to internships, jobs, but also just job readiness, skills and that sort of thing. And then finally, our public exchanges program. And this is all of our public facing projects that engage our youth and allow them to share their voice through different platforms, whether it's portraiture, music videos, murals, exhibitions. So those are our 3 programs. And the Creative Connections program, we have open enrollment. So for any teens and young adults between the ages of 14 and 20 that are interested in getting more involved, please check us out. We have open enrollment.
And I know you take beginners, and there's some people who may not have had an interest in art, but I know through your program have developed that interest. Talk to us, share with us some of your success stories of people who may not have thought of art as a way of life, who've now walked away with a deeper concentration in it.
Yes. So we've had some of our youth that have gone through our Creative Connections program or Creative Collectives that have now joined our staff, whether as teaching artists, photographers, as well as folks that have gone on to do their own craft, starting, comic book companies or their own photo studios. And we understand that not every youth that gets involved with us is necessarily going to end up in an artistic career. But we understand that by being involved in our programs, they're able to, find their voice, like I said earlier, reimagine and really plan, changing narrative around what their future would be. And so we've also had youth who've, gone into careers in construction or in architecture, or things that might be a little less connected to the arts. Well, architecture is, but you know what I mean. Things that might not be traditionally an artist's position, like a singer or dancer, or what have you. And they've been able to take that on based on just their experience in the program, of just being able to find themselves.
And so for you, as you look now to the future, talk to us about the work that you have going on and how people can be a part of what's coming up around the corner.
Yes. So I mentioned our programs here in New York. We're also in Milwaukee, and we have a growing program there. We started our programming in 2018 there. And then we also have pilot programming in Chicago to do our project called the Portrait Project. The idea is that youth are paired with photographers, and through a series of workshops, interviews, they're able to dream up images of how they want to be seen and represented in the world. So whether it's a very literal representation, I want to be seen as a doctor or a lawyer, or, something more abstract. I want to be seen as a better me or bigger than life or what have you. And so this project was actually our pilot project in Milwaukee that started our programming there, and now our community partners in Chicago have requested our programming. So we're building, but it's so important that in building we're not just like expanding for expanding reasons, that it's all about community partnerships and working with organizations that are already doing the work, that are already connected to the youth. And we're just, coming in to sort of enhance and to add, just a little more, what have you. So, that's some of the things that's coming up, and our staff continues to grow. And, we're excited for 2022 and what more we can continue to do.
Yeah, I think about recently we had the family of George Floyd on talking about the murals that have been done and the statue that's been erected in regards to his life. I think about Mike Brown, and I think about the fact that people were engaging in art to support the life of Mike Brown. When you see what's going on in our community in terms of a lot of the social justice, or I should say the social injustice, are you finding that youth are using that art space to really speak to that issue in a way that maybe they can't be out there in the street protesting, but they use art as a form?
Yes, I would say definitely. I think you've explained so eloquently the power of the arts to be able to get the message out there, whether it be to build awareness or build community, or just disrupt, as you've shared. And so I definitely think that we're seeing that with the youth. Many of the youth are invigorated and engaged, and we're finding that so many of them are aware, and it has a lot to do with social media and the internet, but it isn't unusual for us to have a discussion about racial injustice, or even we were having this discussion this week with some youth around being like, what does it mean to be an artist, a hired artist, and creating work for a brand that maybe you don't support or that doesn't have the same politics as you? How do you negotiate a check versus your integrity and what you believe in? And so I would say yes, those discussions are definitely coming up in our spaces as well.
And so I want to also talk a little bit about mentoring, because that's a huge component of what you do, and the mentoring program and how that's really been impactful in a person's life. And when you're talking about navigating through, mentoring is a huge way that people can have a leg up, or I should say a hand up, depending on who's talking. So talk to us about mentoring and the Mentoring and Art Start.
Yeah, so mentoring looks different with different programs. For instance, within our programs on site, we will have a teaching artist, but the workshop, we call them workshops and not classes, because it isn't like your traditional classroom where there's a teacher who has all the knowledge and she's coming to, or they're coming to impart the knowledge on the students. The idea is that this is a collaborative experience. It's a workshop because we're going in with the idea that the teachers are learners just as much as the youth are learners. And so there is a sense of mentorship that happens with the teaching artist who's leading the workshops. And then in some cases, we have volunteer mentors in the workshop working one-on-one with the youth. For creative connections, it looks more like one-on-one mentors. We're fortunate that we have lots of applications coming in for all sorts of different mentors. Yes, so because the program is so individualized, we're choosing mentors that we're choosing mentors that can impact and can support youth depending on their interests. So for instance, just because we have a youth that's a singer, we're not necessarily going to pair them with another singer. We may pair them with a vocal coach, yes, or we may pair them with someone who's in social media and branding to help that singer, increase their social media presence or create a brand for themselves. Or we may pair them with a graphic designer to help them create their album art, So mentorship looks different in different ways, but I would say it's so important, even in the arts world, because yes, the art world can be very inviting and anyone can be, an artist, and there's a way in which it can be accessible, but it can also be inaccessible in terms of who gets the opportunities, whose art gets purchased, all of these things. It can be, it can make certain groups, especially people of color, youth of color, not be able to enter in those spaces. And so mentorship is also an opportunity to invite youth into those spaces and say, you know what, yes, you belong in these spaces, regardless of your history, regardless of the color of your skin. You have the skill and you have what it takes to get this. And so, yeah, I know I touched on a few different things, but
No, and I think you're doing justice, because I think that when we talk about mentorship, so many times what gives people the leg up and the ability to be able to take it to the next level is the fact they actually had a mentor. And so for you in art, using art to really be a voice, and share with me. I talk to people about this question all the time. What's it like for you to have an art space, given the fact that when we look at our educational system, many of the things that get cut on the first line of the budget is arts, music, and sports?
Yeah, it's so funny. Sometimes we'd have youth join our workshop, like say a teen, and they'd say, like in our programs at the residences, for instance, they'd say, I haven't done art since first grade, like, what am I gonna do with art? And I think you're right that art is often, or the arts are often seen as secondary. They're not as essential. But we've seen the power of it. And, we also see the way in which the arts can support your academic progress and so on. And, I might share that this year, actually, we were able to partner with these UOE and have youth that that are justice involved, that are incarcerated, receive English language credits, ELA credits, for participating in our visual arts workshops, and that was huge, because for justice involved youth, because they are transient, because they're moving between spaces, have court dates, all these things, they're oftentimes losing a lot of credits, or unable to be at the same level as their peers. And so to be able to be in an art workshop where you're, enjoying yourself, making projects, and be able to receive credits while participating is so, that was such a huge development for us. Because, yeah, like you said, oftentimes the arts isn't seen as having that level of value.
Yeah. So before we go, I just got to get a quick question in for you. If people want to get connected to you real quickly, how do they go about doing that?
Yes. So our website is www.art-start.org. You can also follow us on social media at artstart.org. And our number is 212-460-0019. But we're always updating our website and our social media with what's going on. For any youth that are interested, please, you can DM us on social media if you're interested. We'll definitely get back to you and get you involved.
Mariama, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Art Start. Listen, and we've got the show started. We want to continue. We got more shows, so don't go anywhere here on the Social Justice Forums. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back in a few.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community,
and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scales of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's gonna go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting
To the new reality.
Reporting from BronxNet,
Well, welcome back to the show. Harlem Grown is a not-for-profit organization whose mission is to inspire youth to lead healthy and ambitious lives through mentorship as well as hands-on education in urban farming, sustainability, as well as nutrition. Now, since the year 2011, Harlem Grown has operated local urban farms to increase access to healthy food for Harlem residents. And joining me now, I am pleased to be joined by the founder and CEO of Harlem Grown, Mr. Tony Hillery. And Tony, good to have you, my brother.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
You know, I like segments like this because it's a time for me to go back and look back at home and be able to see literally when you talk about homegrown, that's me. I'm a homegrown Harlemite. And I know that one of the things that has been in Harlem for a long time was really food insecurity, food deserts. And now to see an organization such as yourself really be impactful in the area of urban farming, it's a great joy to see. So tell us about how this all got started.
Oh, man, it's a really convoluted story. Like I said before, I don't live in Harlem, nor am I from Harlem. Funny, my parents were born and raised in Harlem, but I had no connection to Harlem at all. I actually live in the Riverdale section of the Bronx, and I lived a very lucky, privileged life. And in my life, my definition of poverty was just not having any money. I really didn't understand it. So in 2010, the financial crisis hit me. My business was failing and I'm getting depressed. Sitting right here where I'm speaking to you right now, I was reading about schools, not schools here, but schools throughout the city. And I didn't really understand how in the richest city in the world, we had this disparity in education. So one day, I guess fighting depression, I got on the subway and got off on 135th and Lenox, started walking up the street. There was a school right there. I saw the kids. I went in, told the principal, I'm here to help. She said, help with what? I never had a plan, but I met these children, no different than my children, other than where they lived. And as I volunteer and you see everything every day, I mean, every kid in the school qualified for free breakfast, lunch in school. You see the diet, you see all these different levels that create these communities. And it really blew my mind when I found out, this was 10 years ago, that there were 68,000 homeless children in New York City. Now, any New Yorker, we know homelessness, we see it every day, but you never see children, right? They're like the invisible problem, right? Mm-hmm. And I found out that like 30% of the kids in that school were living in homelessness. And then you really dig deeper and there were 14 homeless shelters in a 4-block radius of that school. Right? That's not indicative of Harlem. As you know, it's a working class, resilient, proud community, but they disproportionately place these homeless shelters in communities like that. They want to put them everywhere. They want to put them downtown, but we see what happens then. They come out in protest, they threaten lawsuits. So where do they end up? They have to go somewhere. They end up in communities like this. So today, 10 years later, I am sorry to say that there's 115,000 homeless children in New York City. It's more than doubled in less than a decade, in spite of all the work that's being done on the ground. And we must do better than that.
Yeah, we have to do better than that. And you're doing better because, listen, you're providing opportunity for urban farming. So I'll just go back to my story for a minute, right? I was a basketball player. I played ball. I really, Harlem Park was right where it is, right around the corner from you. The Y, Kennedy Center, all that there. So I'm using this as a backdrop to say, when we talk about urban farming, that was not even introduced. There was nothing about urban farming that we were introduced to today. How did you get kids locked into this whole thing about urban farming?
Man, I tell you, me too. I walked in there 52 pounds heavier. I was unhealthy. I was on medicine. I'm in the lunchroom watching these kids and I watch how they eat. They couldn't even identify simple vegetables. But I told you about 14 shelters in a 4-block radius. Shrink that radius into a 3-block radius. We have 55 fast food restaurants and 29 pharmacies in a 3-block radius.
Wow.
No affordable food options. And then you can kind of connect the dots. You can't eat what you don't know. And it's a generational thing, right? So now things become convenient and fast and unhealthy. So right across the street from this school was an abandoned community garden. So I started cleaning it out just as an activity for the kids. And then a little girl in kindergarten at the time tugs on my shirt and says, "Why don't we plant something?" I never planted anything until then. I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
But something magical happened when a child plants something. They take ownership of that plant. They won't try anything green inside. They'll ew, 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 right? But let them plant that plant and they're going to taste it. And 8 out of 10 times that they taste it, they're going to like it. But then we're right back where we started. You can't purchase at affordable prices what we grow right across the street. So that's what prompted it. And we had 400 students in the school. So you can imagine the massive food we had to grow.
Right.
So the garden, we made it a farm. We grow collectively over our sites. We grow about 6,000 pounds of organic produce a year. Everything is free. We have egg-laying hens that lay farm fresh eggs every day in Harlem, and everything is free. We have nutrition education, cooking classes, and simple recipe writing. Everything is free. I have to emphasize that. How do you charge poor people for anything? So we fundraise and we underwrite everything for the community. And if we didn't learn anything through the pandemic, food is very vital to health. COVID wasn't killing us at those record numbers. It was the underlying health conditions that were killing us. And most of them were diet related. Diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, all diet related, right? So we engage these kids. And more importantly, what people don't understand about us is that we only plant fruits and vegetables, but we grow healthy children and sustainable communities. I hire young people from Harlem, right? I hire young people and we pay fair wages and healthcare for everyone. But you start on the farm, but you have to go back and pursue your education, get your GED, open bank accounts. There's a lot to that. But you see those young people that we've grown from just hanging out to being a farmer now. Oh my God, man. It's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your life.
So when you think about where you are in terms of the impact the young people's lives in that kind of way, obviously it's not something you wanted to make a difference, but I see now that it's more than you've ever, set out to do. Talk to me about community buy-in, because listen, when you put a garden and a farm in the midst of, a neighborhood, you get a lot of people like, okay, what's going on here? What's happening? Talk to me about neighborhood buy-in and how that really impacted the work that you do.
Oh man, great question. That comes from someone who's from there, and you understand.
Listen, I know my neighborhood, man.
Yes. But let me tell you, the nonprofit sector as a whole, the mission is sound, the passion is sound, but our delivery sucks. It's usually someone not from the community coming in to teach people or show people. People don't need either of those. They need empowering. They can do it themselves. They know what they need and they know what they want. So just think about that arrogant approach that nonprofits do, that we know better. How do we know better than someone born and raised right there? So in the beginning, when I cleaned out that lot, I came in there all green-eyed. I mean, I'm all, everything is beautiful. I come in here with a piece of paper that I got the contract. The people who were hanging out there, they weren't having it, right? It was very contentious. But then I kind of understood where it was coming from. It wasn't anything personal. It was just what I just described. Who is this guy? He's not from here. We've been here for years. So you show up every day and you have the buy-in. You include the community in every step of the way. 10 years later, we are so valued in that community. It's something you've never seen. One of our sites on 127th Street between Lenox and Adam Clayton, we spent $1 million on this 2-story vertical hydroponic system. It's the most amazing thing you've ever seen in New York, maybe in the world. There's another one like it in Copenhagen, Denmark, and the one on 127th Street. We have no problem on our sites. We have no vandalism or theft on our sites. The community embraces what we do because they're part of what we do. Everything we do is for the community.
Yeah, well, I'll just give you a little piece of information. My address growing up was 237 West 127th Street, apartment number 3A. That 127th Street between 7th and 8th, Adam Clayton Powell, yes, and Frederick Douglass, for people who don't know. So to know what you're talking about, I know firsthand that, communities can really buy in. And I'm glad to have the conversation with you because really, there's so many people, there's misconceptions and stereotypes out there. Oh, the community doesn't want that. And it's a lie. And it's a lie because people want to be able to have sustainable lifestyles through healthy eating, through nutrition and that. And you're right. Growing up, there wasn't an access. We didn't have many stores in our neighborhood. We had a lot more fast food stores, a lot more junk food stores. And to really be able to have this kind of thing in the backyard literally was not seen. So talk to us about how this replicates out in other neighborhoods, because, if it works here, it can work in other places too.
Yes, it does. And, great segue, because we get inquiries from city planners all across the country. And people pay me to speak. I tell my story. They fly me all around the country. I go in there, tell the story. I charge them a fee that goes to our budget. And unbeknownst to many, there's a Harlem in every city in this country. I just work in Harlem. This is BronxNet, so you're in the Bronx. And the way the powers that be would have it to make us think that this is a racial thing, like this is a Black and brown people thing. No, it's a poor people thing. If you're poor in this country, I've been to some cities, I didn't see a Black or brown face for a couple of days, but you'll see miles of fast food restaurants and a drive-through pharmacy at every intersection. Some of the most unhealthy people you've ever seen. The common denominator is this is what they do to our communities. It can't be an accident. It can't be an accident. These food deserts, as they say, deserts are natural. This is not natural. This is all man-made. This is zoning. This is intentional, right? And I don't want to get into conspiracy theories and all of that, but this is the landscape in which we find ourselves. It is scalable, but Harlem is unique. Harlem is unique to the fact that it's so dense. And you have a high-rise area of housing that has 10,000 people in it. I can put a farm across the street and have 1,000 people come through that place. And kids can come on their own because they're just walking outside and right there is the farm. Same can't be said in Kansas City, right? Where a child has to get to this location. So logistically, it's a little challenging. It's not as easy as in Harlem. I love Harlem. I can plop a farm down right here and you can throw a rock in any direction and hit a school or a daycare in any direction because we're so packed. Same thing in the Bronx, same thing in Brooklyn. I mean, that's urban settings, right? So it's not as easy in more rural settings, but the premise, the roots of what we do in the schools with these children, that's replicable anywhere. It just takes the will of the school board and the Department of Education in said community to make it a reality.
Yeah, share with us. I mean, you've got a 10-year anniversary. I mean, you've been doing this now for 10 years, honestly, and you've done this, and you've amassed a great amount of community partners. But most of all, you've been able to capture the heart of the community, and particularly our young people. What gives you the most satisfaction in what you do?
Man, I can tell you the dozens of children who've come through this program, and first generation 4-year university students. We have one in NYU, all on the dean's list, doing whatever they want to do. Again, we plant fruits and vegetables. We grow people. We grow people. And that's what I hang my hat on, is that, these schools, man, it's very hard. It's very challenging for these students to go through. And there's no lack of intelligence or creativity in these inner cities, man. They take nothing and make something out of anything. I mean, they're the most resilient communities you've ever seen. But the odds and the math doesn't line up in their favor, because you have to run a gauntlet of things to succeed. So you need that guidance. You need that mentorship. You got it with basketball or whatever mentor you had along the way. Too many of our kids don't have that. And that's my secret sauce. All those beautiful corporations you see on our website, they're not donors, they're partners. I understand the difference of a donor. A donor is a transaction. You give me a check, I give you a report, end of story. Partners, we identify a common cause. In this case, it's youth, education, nutrition, homelessness, and we try to do it together. So we have partnerships. They send their employees on these farms and work with these kids. They open up their doors of their Fortune 100 companies. My kids are there all the time. I get our kids paid mentorships and fellowships and internships at these organizations. That opens up the doorway of possibility. And that's all this is. That's what separates these communities, is lack of access and lack of opportunity. So we use our farms as that to build a bridge from downtown to uptown.
Before we go, I know you got kids who are out there watching right now, and we're seeing in the Bronx, we're seeing in Manhattan, we're seeing right there in Harlem. So if there's a young man, young woman, or even a parent of somebody who wants to take advantage of this, how do they do that?
Just reach out to us. Well, it's always, first thing is showing up, right? You just show up on our farms. We're open every day during the season. We're only 5 days now because of the winter. But you show up or you send an email to info@harlemgrown.org. And if we can't do it, we'll find someone who can. And we try to connect the dots. We try to put people in the best position to get them to where they're trying to get, right? We try to help them be a better version of themselves, as we do too.
Yeah. Well, Tony, I want to thank you, brother, for coming and the work that you're doing, for hometown, making it happen literally 1 block away, 2 blocks away from a lot of the work that's going on. And I'm glad that it's going on. I'm glad that our young people are having opportunities, because back in the day, they were very scarce, but you're creating some major ones for them. So thank you for being with us, share with us here on the Social Justice Forums.
My pleasure. I hope to see you out there one day. I got to show you.
Oh,
you won't believe it.
It's a commitment. You know what I'm saying? I'll be there. Anything for home. So you know that, and I appreciate you even sending the invitation. Thanks a lot.
All right, you got it, man. Stay safe.
Right. Tony Hillery, our guest here. Stay with us here. We got more show. Don't go anywhere. Right here on the Social Justice Forums.
We built a media network for you.
BronxNet TV.
Come learn in your new state-of-the-art studios at Lehman College.
At Mercy College.
And coming soon to the South Bronx in the Hub.
Inspire with your stories, culture, history.
Your Bronx on BronxNet.
Engage with us.
Connect with us at your channels and at BronxNet.tv.
Learn, engage, inspire. BronxNet TV.
From the Bronx
to the world.
BronxNet.
And welcome back to the show. The Selma Center for Nonviolence, Truth, and Reconciliation works to address both violence and conflicts affecting the United States of America. Now, the center envisions a transformed community where justice prevails, people are equipped to fulfill their full human potential, as well as creating equity in the systemic barriers to growth and development. And joining us now to discuss more is the Executive Director of the Selma Center for Nonviolence, Truth, and Reconciliation. We've got Ainka Jackson with us. And Ainka, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. So glad to be here. We say long name, bigger purpose.
That's it. That's it. And there is a big purpose to the work that you do, obviously. And when we talk about reconciliation and we talk about nonviolence and we look at our society today, we understand that racism still exists, bigotry still exists. And so that means there is a need for the work. And so first of all, thank you for the work that you're doing in a beautiful place in Alabama. And thank you for sharing with our audience. But share with us a little bit about the work that's being done, especially in heightened times like these where racism and bigotry still rears its ugly head.
Yeah, I don't know that it's changed a whole lot here in Selma in terms of racism. I don't know that it's heightened for us because I don't know that it ever died down, unfortunately. Wow. So I'll tell you a little bit about how the center was founded, and I think that will ground us in sort of the story of Selma as well. We were founded in 2015 amidst the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday and the Selma to Montgomery March. That weekend, when President Obama was here and people were here from all over the country and different parts of the world, the KKK allegedly distributed 30,000 recruitment flyers. So we had that form of violence on one end, and on the other end, that Sunday, it was a different kind of Bloody Sunday. We had 2 murders, and we had 2 more in less than a month in the town. There's less than 20,000 people. 2014, our county was the poorest in the state. 2015, Selma was the most dangerous place to live in Alabama. In 2016, Selma was the 8th most dangerous place per capita in the whole country. It's insane. This place where nonviolence overcame violence was the 8th most dangerous place per capita in the country. We believe that broken relationships have led to broken economies, leading to broken communities, all in need of healing. Not fixing, but all in need of healing. And so we partner with communities to heal relationships, to heal the economy, and heal communities. Our founders came together and they said that we needed to address violence in all its forms, whether it be racial violence, whether it be physical violence, or whether it be economic violence. We often don't think of poverty as a form of violence, but we think that anything that dehumanizes other people is a form of violence. And one of our founders and our board chair, Dr. Bernard Lafayette, who was a leader in the Nashville sit-ins, the Freedom Rides, and the Selma movement, and who Dr. King appointed to be over the Poor People's Campaign. In our very first board meeting, he said, there's unfinished business of the civil rights movement, and we need a Selma 2. So we say Selma 2.0, finishing the unfinished business of bridging divides and building the beloved community. And that's what we seek to do, is to bridge divides and build the beloved community.
How do we go about this here? Because you're talking about building community and there's so many divisions that still exist. And it takes work. And it takes work on both sides. And so sometimes we can see a lot of stubbornness and resistance, but you really work to deal with breaking down the walls of resistance and really forming a bridge.
Absolutely. And I think that all sides have this view of othering people, right? And making people disposable, progressives and conservatives alike. We all think we're right. And we dispose of other people. And it leaves no space to build relationships. and building relationships are the core of beloved community. In fact, the principle of nonviolence that says the beloved community is the framework for the future, principle 2, it says that how you get there is that you're raising relationships to a height where justice prevails and persons attain their full human potential, which means relationships have to be at the core, and we can't make people disposable. It means that just because I vote differently for you, and though how we vote has real life consequences. So it's not to diminish that, right? But I also know that there is power in relationships that is transformative, right? We've had chat and choose before the pandemic is how one way we would build relationships with people in a local coffee shop. And a white evangelical Christian woman who was a Trump supporter, very different from me. We have a shared faith, but we exercised it very differently. But she told me once, she said that the problem with Black and white people is that we give grace and mercy to those we are in relationship with, and we're not in relationship with each other. And that was so telling and helpful for me. She went on to say how they even do that within voting, giving grace and mercy to politicians because there feels to be a connection. And I was able to share with her that because she kept talking about how fathers need to be returned to the home, all the systemic barriers that block that. And if really that's what we want, and if really that's what's good and needed, then join us in the fight to remove these systemic barriers. But if we refuse to talk with each other because we have different beliefs and we live out our faith differently, we never would have learned from each other. And in fact, we have had a value that said, we meet people where they are and we love them forward. And realize how paternalistic that was, because it still said, we're right and we're gonna love you forward. Right. And so we had to change that to meet each other where we are, where you are, and we'll love each other forward because we both have to grow and move forward.
And talk about moving forward. How do you go about that, given the work that you're doing right now? So I know 2.0 is an extension of what's already existed, but walk us through, if somebody was to walk into your center, what would they experience in terms of moving things forward?
So it depends upon the day. So one of the ways we do it is through training, right? And so we have restorative justice trainings where we are ensuring that the things that we have in common, like our values, are used to resolve conflict, right? To make sure that people's needs are met. That is that restorative justice culture is about making sure people's needs are met, whether you have offended or have been offended, right? That is making sure everybody, including the community, their needs are met. Whether that is Kenyan nonviolence conflict reconciliation, which is about using the principles and steps of nonviolence to reconcile relationships. So not just the conflict, right? Because sometimes we resolve conflict by just not talking to each other, right? But to reconcile those relationships and making sure that justice is present, right? Some people think that reconciliation is just touchy-feely, right? No, reconciliation requires justice. And so doing that training is really important. We're gonna have a training of the trainers and a 2-day training with Dr. Bernard Lafayette coming up in the beginning of March, the first week in March. We always do that as a part of the Bridge Crossing Jubilee. Or our racial equity training. We designed a racial equity training called Beyond Divide and Conquer, Unite and Build. And it looks at how racism, race was literally created so to divide us so a few could have a lot and a lot could have a little, and how we can resist that and build. And so in January, we're also doing that training, and we're going to be doing a training of the trainer. So if you want to train using that curriculum in March. And so that curriculum is really, really powerful because it uses stories, and stories are really so powerful because it's hard to argue with my story. You could argue with a lot of things, but my personal experience is hard to argue with. And we use first-person historical narratives, as well as people sharing their stories as a part of that, to look at how personal, cultural, and institutional racism and the role of power affects us all, and that there's a cost of racism to us all. So that's one way. We partner with the Black Belt Community Foundation as a part of Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation with the Kellogg Foundation. And there are a lot of initiatives around that. And our theory of change is that in order for transformation to occur, there has to be heart and mind work, action with hearts and minds. And so we focus on narrative change, changing the false narrative of the hierarchy of human value, and racial healing and relationship building. So doing that heart and mind work, and material conditions work. So around law, economy, and separation. And separation is like segregation in schools, housing, social separation. And when you're working in both of those, and everybody doesn't have to do all of those, but it does mean that collectively we need to be in partnership with each other doing those things, because that's when transformation happens. It won't happen just by trying to affect material conditions. It also won't just happen because people are suffering right now. So I can't wait for your heart and mind to change while I'm suffering now. So it has to be a marriage between the two for transformation to occur. And so doing that work with the Kellogg Foundation is a major piece of what we do. And the last piece I'll focus on is not the only thing we do, but the last piece I'll focus on is this piece around physical violence. I said that in 2016, we were the 8th most dangerous place per capita in the country. Well, we have surpassed our number of murders already this year, greatly surpassed that this year. And so I don't know where we'll land compared to other people in the country, because violence has increased for the nation. But it has been bad here. And our young people, we've had a lot of murders of young people, and young people murdering people. We had a school shooting at the end of March. And since then, there's been a lot of retaliation, unfortunately. And so this program that we're starting is very crucial to stopping the retaliation that is so often happening in our community. And so this street outreach worker program, where it's like people who used to live a particular life, but don't anymore, right? And want differently for their community, but their community knows them and their community trusts them. And that's very important, because the community will tell them things that they won't tell police officers. It doesn't matter how much community policing is done, how wonderful some police officers may be. It's just some things, because of the history of policing in this country, that people are not going to tell police officers. So you need somebody else that people feel comfortable talking to, that can intervene, not to do police officers' jobs, but who can help prevent retaliation, who can talk to people at the hospital or at the scene or at schools, to make sure to get the information needed to stop retaliation. But there's a victim services piece of that too, though. So when there is balance, to ensure that families are getting what they need to heal. Because a lot comes up, right? It's much easier for me to feel the need to retaliate if my needs aren't being met. And so making sure those families' needs are being met, whether that's helping to plan a funeral, whether that's helping to get counseling, whether that's going through victim compensation process, whatever those needs are. And the last piece to this program that is all rooted in nonviolence. Unlike some of the other models, this one is grounded and rooted in nonviolence. And that was very, very important for us because of the history of our community with nonviolence, but also we knew that we needed a cultural shift, and that nonviolence undergirding that is important. And so that last piece of this beloved community, beloved healthy community model of this violence intervention program is education and employment opportunities program, to make sure that in working with those most likely to shoot or be shot, that they have something else, right? That there are education and employment opportunities, and eventually our hope is to make sure it's not just having a good job, but helping them to tap into their purpose and being able to prosper from their purpose.
I want to be able to tap our viewers in, and I mean, we only have a couple of minutes left, but I want to be able to tap our viewers in to say, listen, you know what? Even though you're down there in Alabama, we're all fighting in many ways the same fight. How can people from around the country join in partnership with our brothers and sisters in Selma to be able to assist in the work that's going on?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'll say two things to that. Selma has changed the world not once, but twice. It was in 1865, after the Battle of Selma, when the Union soldiers took over Selma because of the stronghold of the Confederacy. Within a week, the Civil War was over. And so because of that, we have had fierce backlash for us changing the world twice. Southern Poverty Law Center employee said that hate groups study Selma to see how a small minority of white people can control a majority of Black people. This is important because we are already a model for some. Selma Center's goal is that we are a model of the beloved community, so that when people come to Selma, they are not just coming for our history, but they are coming for our healing. They're saying, how did you go from the 8th most dangerous place per capita in the country to this, right? They're saying, how did you go from all of these failing schools to this, so that they then could take it back to their communities, right? And so investing in Selma, as Selma has invested in the world, is a continued investment in the world, because we seek to be a model of the beloved community as an example for the world. And so we encourage you to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and also our website, www.selmacntr.org. That is www.selmacntr.org. We are actually right now doing a campaign to try to hire another victim services person, because we only have one, and it's just too much violence happening right now for one person to meet all the needs of those who have been affected by violence. So please, I encourage you to check us out on Facebook or on our website to get connected in us being a model of the beloved community, Selma 2.0.
Ainka Jackson, thank you so much for sharing with us and being with us here on the Social Justice Forums and the work that's going on in Selma. It's great to hear that you still got boots on the ground and the work still continues. And yes, there are some days when it seems like the work is in vain, but continue doing what you're doing. And I know that you're making a difference and making an impact. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
All righty. Well, we want to let our viewers know, unfortunately, we have come to the end of our show today, but we do hope that you enjoyed this week's discussion on the Social Justice Forums. Now, we want to let you know, if you want to watch the recablecast, you are more than welcome to. There you can find what you missed on the show. And if you want to find out more, go to our social media platforms at BronxNet TV, and of course, our website at BronxNet.org. And yeah, you can be able to share your points of view and let us know what you think. We encourage you to join us next week as we join in the conversation, elevate the discussion, and we invite you to join us back here, as we bring you further awareness of the news and the inequities that so many people face. I'm Daren Jaime saying Merry Christmas. For those of you that are celebrating Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays. And listen, we'll check you next week on the Social Justice Forums. Take care.